Is it on?
I've had this.
There it is.
Good evening and welcome to this special session of the Lakeville Area Schools Board of Education. Board members in attendance tonight include Director Carbone, Director Cameron, Director Swanson, Chair Baker, Director Anderson, and Director Nicholson. The board is joined by Superintendent Michael Bauman, members of the Executive Cabinet, Bill Holmgren, Dr. Emily McDonald, Michelle Humphrey, and Brenda Albrecht. Our meeting tonight is our organizational meeting, so our agenda is just a little bit different than we're typically used to here. Have some prep work that we need to do as a board to kind of go through the roles and responsibilities of the different officer positions that we have. We have a calendar review to take care of, some policy reviews, and then I have another open item, just some conversation related to how the meeting will flow for the rest of the remaining items on the agenda. So we'll go ahead and start with the discussion of the roles and responsibilities. We did have some meeting prep work where we met in advance with the new board members and talked about those different roles. Director Anderson and I led that. So this should be mostly review. And just for attendance purposes, so that everyone's aware, Director Thompson has now arrived. He likes to make an entrance. All right, so we'll start with the role of chair. The chair is the position that presides over all the meetings. So you meet with the superintendent regularly, with the vice chair as well. When we have emails or any type of communication, the chair is the one that responds to that. Usually most communication goes through the chair so that to help the superintendent have some flexibility with the communication, because if all 7 of us are emailing him all at once, it can be a little much for someone to take care of. We want him to be running our district. So usually most of the emails go through the chair, and then the chair would tell the superintendent what the direction is or what board members are interested in learning about. Vice chair obviously meets with the chair when they're meeting with the superintendent. The vice chair also runs a meeting if the chair is absent. And also, like, I feel like the vice chair is someone that really helps bring perspective to things. I'll just give my perspective real quick. I've had 2 different chairs. One of them was a longtime member of the board, and one of them wasn't as much, but had some legal background too. Both of them brought something different to that position. I saw it as a partnership, not like I'm chair and I'm making the decisions, but more like, hey, this is a question that someone brought to the board. How do you think we should handle this? Or this is how I see it. What's your perspective on it? Just so that I had a more open viewpoint on topics. So, your vice chair should be someone that you can bounce ideas off of. Clerk is our person that signs all of our documents. The clerk also certifies the election. The clerk, a lot of the duties of the clerk are, if you look down later on our agenda, are taken over by Kim Elson. She does some of those duties, so we do apply some of that to her. Treasurer is the one that looks out for all the finance. The treasurer currently sits with the Finance Advisory Council. And then, they look over things. They ask, they work with Bill Holmgren a lot if that's needed. Just some of those things. And then finance, the treasurer is also the one, if you look further down on the agenda, we do provide some of those duties to Bill Holmgren instead of the treasurer, because obviously the treasurer can't be here all the time. So that's kind of an overview of those positions. At this time, we'll go through each one and we'll decide and we'll talk as a board, like who wants to run for those positions, just so that the board knows, what to expect when we get to the election part. We'll start with chair, and I just want to be very clear that I've enjoyed my time as chair. It was definitely some difficult times and some tough learning for me, but I would love a break from this role, and I open that up to someone else who's willing to run. I think it's important to keep the role of chair fresh with new leadership and fresh ideas, and rotated frequently. So I don't see it as a sad thing. I see it as passing that torch on to someone else to bring some fresh ideas to the board. So I will open the floor up for discussion right now on people who are interested in running for chair. Please.
I would humbly be willing to take over for you if you're ready
right.
to step down.
Thank you.
I'll just say, I think having served in a couple different roles on this board, it was nice to come into the board with not having a high level of responsibility that you see in a chair and vice chair. And I think anyone on this board has the qualifications, just in terms of leadership background, and I think everybody would certainly bring a different perspective and different lens. I would throw my hat in here just because I do have experience on the board and have established relationships with many of the people in the administration and the superintendent, but just would throw my hat in there.
All right, so we have two people that are interested in running for chair. How that will go when we get to that point for election of officers in the meeting, someone will nominate. You can nominate yourself if you want. It really doesn't matter. And then we will have a roll call vote on the different members that are interested in running. Are there any other people that have thought about running for chair? I want to be very clear that I have a script for whoever is going to take over this meeting, so I don't intend to leave anyone without any type of a guide, and I will offer my service to this board in any way, shape, or form to help anybody that are in these officer roles to make that transition as smooth as possible for you, and that also helps our board out, making sure that we're transitioning our members. So just to clear that up. Anybody else interested? Director Thompson.
I am not interested, but I do want to say thank you for the past 2 years of your service on the board, especially us navigating through the various scenarios and getting us to where we are today. So thank you for that.
Thanks, I really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to vice chair. Like I said, I talked about this role quite a bit. I look at that person as a member, as a team member with the chair, kind of helping provide some feedback, some perspective on decisions, helping, meeting with the superintendent, helping remember things, because sometimes, when we're talking in meetings, it's hard to remember all the things that we've brought up in working sessions to make sure our agendas are correct. So that's kind of the role of a vice chair. Is anybody interested in that role?
Yes, I would be interested in the vice chair.
All right. So I have Director Carbone is interested in that. Is anybody else?
I would also be, am I live?
Push your
Also
button.
interested- I pushed it. It's green. Okay. I'd also be interested in vice chair, but I'd also like to say I appreciate both of you, Matt and Carly, volunteering to run for chair. And another option, perhaps, could also be to think about whoever is not chair, because of the strong leadership with those two, could serve as vice chair to the other. So I want to throw that out there as well.
Yep, I like that. Anybody else interested in vice chair? Okay. The next role is clerk. Like I said, the clerk signs all the contracts, looks through those, makes sure everything is correct, and then also certifies the election. I do want to say, like, for any of the officer positions, this was something that I did as chair, but if the vice chair wasn't present, I wanted to make sure I pulled in another officer. So anytime I was meeting with the superintendent, I pulled in another officer if the vice chair wasn't present, just so that we always had two people with meeting with the superintendent to have that voice of the board. I'll say I'm interested in clerk just for the reason of I work in a district and I'm very familiar with school district contracts. I look them over all the time. I'm aware of them, so it's something that I've been working on as chair, just thinking about different districts and the contracts that they have and kind of comparing and contrasting what we do. So that would be a position that I'm interested in, but is anybody else interested in it? Yes, no? It's so exciting. All right. All right, we'll move on to treasurer. Like I said, right now, our treasurer sits on the finance council, and then it kind of helps us understand the financial part when we have those presentations. It's Brian right now, Director Thompson, and he does a great job coming up with questions and pointing out some of the details that we miss on those reports. So it would be nice if there's someone with a thirst for finance that would love to go through all of that data. Anyone interested in that? Unless Director Thompson still wants it, I won't step on his toes with that either.
Do you want it?
He said no.
I would be interested in that role.
Okay. So we have Director Nicholson that's interested in that. Anybody else?
Is it weird to say you're interested in more than one? I mean, I feel
No,
I'm interested in that too.
totally
I served on the Finance Advisory Committee and the Facilities Committee for a couple of years for the district, so I feel like I have a good handle on that. Yeah, would like to continue that work.
Perfect. All right, so we kind of have an idea of who is wanting what roles. Just make sure when we get to the election of the officers that, like I said, you either nominate yourself if you're interested in that, or someone else can nominate you. It doesn't really matter. And I had been discussing with the Director Swanson. He brought a question to mind about the flow for that. So typically when we have a meeting, there's a motion and a second, discussion, and then we do a vote. For the election of the officers, Robert's rule says we don't need a second for that. So if you nominate someone, we don't need to wait for a second for that. It just takes one nomination. We do have to ask 3 times for if there's any other nominees. That's part of the process. It's weird, I know, but you have to do it. And then we will do roll call votes on that, and Kim will help with that. So just to make sure that everyone's clear on the process there. The next thing we have on our agenda, we'll just keep going, is the calendar review. If you had a chance to look over, what we did is we went ahead and added in those board development sessions that we had discontinued in the previous year. The first year we did the board development, and then once we kind of went through all of our staff development with that, we discontinued those meetings with new board members coming on. We decided to put those back in, so we added in the board development sessions. Another thing that we will be adding is in case of inclement weather, we'll have the meeting the following day at the same time and place. We do live in Minnesota, so sometimes the snow prevents us from attending. Honestly, I worry more about our executive cabinet that has a little bit further to travel than those of us that live in Lakeville. So just making sure that we have some type of a statement for inclement weather, just to keep everybody safe. So that kind of helps us, just make sure we have that in the planning. Were there any questions about the calendar or any issues with that board members saw? No? Okay, so just know that when we come down to that item, it says set board meeting schedule for that recommended action. This is what we'll be voting on. So just so that everybody's clear on that. The other item, or the next item that we have for review, is the Policy 209, which is our Code of Ethics. This is something that we put on the docket to review every single year at this time. It just kind of goes over what's expected of a board member. It's really important, so it's one of those things that I hope everyone took a chance to read before you got here. Being a school board member is something that I take very seriously. I think it's something that you're called to, and we are representing not only our community and our school district, but all of our student population as well. So it's just really important that we try to keep a level of decorum at our meetings, that we are trying to make decisions that are in the best interest of all of our students and staff, that we're just trying to hold to the ethical principles that are outlined in this policy. Director Thompson, I know that you were talking about this policy in particular. Were there concerns that you had about this one, or things that you had wanted to update? Just for discussion, since we're talking about it.
Yeah, so I had a chance to review Policy 209. I did take a look at the MSBA model version along with 10 other districts. I made some recommended changes, and I've shared that with the broader group.
Right.
So I'll pause here if there's any questions associated with that.
So just to be clear, since this is a special session, it doesn't really count as our first reading. We'll have to bring this to a working session to discuss more. But because it was already on the agenda for tonight, we can still discuss that policy. So that's why he's bringing some changes. I didn't have any questions about the things that you brought.
Okay.
Did anybody else? Or have anything that they need to discuss or add with this policy? Questions, concerns?
I guess I'm wondering how much formal conversation we're having about this policy at this point. I totally understand review of the policy in terms of
Right.
these are very important for our new board members and our returning board members to be thoughtful about, but I guess I wasn't planning to dive into edits at this point.
Well, probably not edits, but just I was looking for more of a discussion. I think one of the things that I've struggled with on this policy is that what do you do when someone's not following it, or is not holding to the ethical behavior that we would appreciate for an office of the school board? That's something that I've struggled with as chair, and what needs to be done. I'm hoping that this board can decide, we're all adults, we're all professionals, and that we're going to hold to that ethical policy without someone needing to call us out on that. So I guess I'm looking like we're reading it, we're agreeing to it in public that this is what we want to have our ethics stand for. Did you?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I do like the edits that were made, especially to subsection C. I believe it's more in line with, we are board members, we're going to act as one and make decisions, but we still have our own voice too, and we'll have our own opinions, and that's not going to get us in violation of our own policies. So I do
Right.
appreciate the edits.
Right. And we can voice those opinions.
And you can
in a
you can
respectful
disagree
manner,
with me
right?
outside of a board meeting, and it'll be completely fine. So-
All right. All right, so we'll just keep moving on, since there's no further discussion on that policy at this point. It'll come up at another work session because we are going to review the 200 policy series as a board. The next policy that we're just going to review momentarily would be Policy 208. The reason that we're reviewing this tonight is kind of because it sets the stage for what we want to do as a board. It's how we are going to move forth and review policies and implement policy for the district. One thing that we struggled with as a past board was making sure that we were reviewing the policies frequently enough and making those edits that MSBA had recommended, and we hadn't been keeping up with those as a district. So this is our purpose as a board, is policy. So I think it's important that we review this policy, talk about it, think about it, especially as we're moving forward, because we as a board need to determine, right now we have a policy committee, and the district also has a policy committee. Is that the best path moving forward? Is that how we want to handle things as a board, or do we want to work more in conjunction with the district and attend the policy meetings together? So just some thoughts on that policy. Director Thompson, did you kind of want to talk through some of the things that you were looking at with that?
Yeah, I think the minor, no, not the minor, but the changes that I made, again, I bumped it up against the Minnesota School Board Association model policy.
Right.
And did look at 10 other district policies that are associated with this one. I think some of the decisions that the board will have to decide on is that, do we want to give ourselves kind of a 3-year cadence of reviewing all policies, or a 4-year cadence? And then we're looking at other policies across the state. There are various listings of policies that each district would review annually. And so I think there's something there we'll have to kind of investigate more of, which policies are required annually and which ones do we want to review annually, even though it may not be required. And so those are the two big ones. The other one that I would say is another big one was the scope of the responsibility of the superintendent when there is and when there isn't such a policy that exists. And so I expanded on that, copying quite a bit of maybe what Wayzata put together for their superintendent policy. And so I thought this would be a good opportunity to revamp those. That's it.
Nice. Anybody have any questions or comments on this policy?
I just want to say, Brian, I appreciate the edits that you sent. One question, and this isn't for Brian, and perhaps this is for the next work session, but I'd be curious to learn who does our district compare itself to in terms of our peers? So I work at the University of Minnesota. We have a set standard of peer institutions when we're looking at any policies or changes as an institution. Those are the ones that we look to, so that we're comparing against apples to apples as best we can. And so I would think Wayzata for sure is one of those of ours, but that'd be good to learn. So we're not comparing policies to like Cloquet.
Right.
We will have different policies perhaps than they would.
It's definitely interesting. Like, we go back to MSBA because they are the standard that we set our policies against. But then each district kind of does things differently depending on if they want to combine some policies from MSBA, if they want to have some of their own, if they want to change those. The danger with straying too far from the MSBA legal policy that they have in place is that it does open things up to some legal quandaries. So anytime we do change anything, it has to go through legal first. So there are attorney fees associated with that. So it just kind of depends on what we want to do as a board. And I thought it was a good thing to throw on the agenda just to get you thinking in that direction. This is something that we have all shared some passion for, to make sure that we have our policies in check. And it's something that we want to make sure that doesn't slide back again, that we keep on that, keeping the policies updated with the law too and statute. Director Swanson?
Do you have any information, you're talking about maybe working with the district office on policy implementation or creation? What do they currently do separate from the board,
Sure.
I guess?
So the district, because a lot of our policies are out of date, the district has a policy committee that's working through the ones just to update them to statute, so that we're legally correct. Because we're kind of doing different things, the board was working primarily with the 200 series, which talks about what we do as a board. So ours was focused on the board ones, the district one was focused on the district ones. I foresee, once we have a chance to work through that, being able to work together with the district one. They already bring their policy to a working session, and we have the opportunity to put our voice in there. So it's not like we don't work with the district policy committee. It's just that typically they meet during the day. We're working during the day, so a lot of the board members don't have the opportunity to attend those. So they still always come to the board working session. Does that answer your question? Sorry.
Can I say something? Sorry.
Go ahead.
We did, just to update all the board members, we did, the policy committee did fully review all the 200 series to make sure that the new board coming in, all those 200 policy series are consistent with MSBA in terms of legal updates. So just as an FYI for that. But with regard to, one thing I was kind of thinking on is, in terms of the cadence that you suggested, is sometimes I think when we get too specific in policy, it can put us in a bad position. So instead of having a cadence of, these reviewing 800, 700, 600, these for this year, then this, I think maybe it would be, I don't want to say safer, but better for the board to decide at the outset of the year what the goal is for policy review, and that way we don't have to put it in policy specifically, but have a plan for kind of what we're doing. That'd be my recommendation, just because if something significant happens that takes a lot of our time and attention, like budget cuts or boundary changes or things like that, we don't have as much time to review policy. So it should definitely be on our docket, but I think we should be careful about how specific we are in policy.
Director Thompson?
Yeah, I'd be okay with that, so that we're not aligned to saying that we have to do these at this time. Maybe it would be 1/3 is done by the end of the year, or 25%, or something of that nature. For additional clarity, I did look at 11 different districts from what I was initially reviewing. A couple from our neighboring districts, Prior Lake, Hastings, Farmington, a couple of them that were further outside our district that are much larger, like Osseo, Anoka, Hennepin. And then I looked at some others that were kind of, I don't want to call them outliers, but unique ones like Princeton, or in Forest Lake, and Edina, Wayzata, Eden Prairie, and so in Hastings. So you've got a good mixture of districts around, not just in the suburbs, but across the state. Now I didn't pick anyone from like Duluth or wherever in that area. So.
Right. Sure.
Yep.
Madam Chair, may I just offer a couple things? Super important discussion, obviously, and policy is the domain of the board, school board. To maybe elaborate a little bit more on Director Swanson's question, there's an obligatory requirement that administration has to follow through with regards to anything to do with policy. The word that I have not heard used is liability.
Yeah.
So we have to be a little more sensitive to that, not overly sensitive, but sensitive to that. And with regard to cadence, it's a matter of prioritize and execute in order to stay in the proper rhythm of review, and we are doing that. But there's another driver, and that's our legislature, which is about to start to seat again. And when the legislature passes laws and makes changes, that can interdict any particular cadence you may have, because you have to go back and refine that, and that might dictate more so what that policy and addressing a particular policy might need to be. For example, cell phones. We know there's a deadline on that for March. That's just an example. So staff here within administration has to make sure that we are partnering with you and keeping all of those things in line, and you should expect that from us. So I just want to share all that.
Perfect. Any further discussion on this tonight? Okay. We'll move on to the last item that we have before our oath of office, which is just an open conversation related to remaining agenda items. I'm just going to use this time to kind of explain what the rest of the agenda looks like. Once we do elections and we get down to recommended actions, there are a few things there that we have to vote on. One of those is our board meeting schedule that we've already discussed, our compensation and mileage for board members, the one where we pick our newspaper. There is only one in the area, so that's why that one's listed. The one where we designate our legal counsel. And then the other one, when we get to E, those items that are listed under E, we're going to approve those all together. So it's kind of like a consent agenda. So under that one, that's where we have some of the authorization things that I was discussing earlier, where Kim Elson takes over some of our clerk roles, where Bill Holmgren takes over some of the treasurer roles, where we give authority to the superintendent for specific things too. We just intend to, and we name our bank and all of that too. We just intend to approve those in one consent instead of going through each of those items individually. And then we are adjourned for the night. So before we get to that oath of office, were there any of those items that you had specific questions on? Now would be a good time to ask those. And we can kind of discuss any of those before we get to that point. Director Swanson.
I have a question regarding the investments and what we're doing with our funds just on hand. Is the district office, are they satisfied with where the funds are now, or have any other suggestions or recommendations as to where they'd like to move them?
This is Wells Fargo.
We are happy where the funds are. We have two different corporations that hold as a financial advisor. And, we have the money that we have, any excess money we have at any time, we do invest that, and it's in multiple places. It doesn't stay in that one place. But we are happy with who.
Okay.
And these particular for new specialized schools.
Okay.
Is there a process, can I ask, through which you just analyze that on an annual basis to see how it compares to other offerings?
We meet once a month to look at what kind of investments or the terms are they coming out, what can go back in, what do we need cash on. That's looked at on a monthly basis, and then make a decision on how far out we can put in these investments.
If I may, so Ellers is our financial advisor who does that comparative analysis, and we can share that with any board member or the board if that's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any other question on Director Thompson?
Yeah, I think I'm okay with the recommendation, but I think it may be prudent of us just to learn more at a following working session. I think the question is more of, we as an organization will be spending over $1 billion in taxpayer-funded for education over the next 4 years. And so I'm assuming that some of that compensation will be used, may not be used right away. And so are we investing that in the right places? What is the rate of return? Are there things that we can consider in regards to what to do with those funding? Nothing to be discussed now, but I think that's the open-ended question. Like, we're bringing in all this revenue. Do we spend it right away where we've got a couple $1,000s in the bank, or are we investing it? And if so, what are we doing with that investment money? What are we doing with those returns? And then how do we know that we're hitting our investment target versus we're just investing it, if that makes sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Director Nicholson?
Superintendent Baumann, you mentioned Ellers is the financial advisor. They're just not listed on here, it looks like, or are they within one of these groups?
Oh. It just says Fidelity Investments.
Investments, I think, are listed as Fidelity. The financial advisors, I don't think is on here. They're not our investor. They do our analysis and our support.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Any other questions on those items? No? All right, so we'll go on to what everyone is waiting for, which is the ceremonial oath of office. Superintendent Bauman? It's not on yet.
My command voice, there it goes.
Oh, there it is.
Okay, we'll start with, obviously, we want to do a ceremonial oath, and that's for 4 members that are coming on new to the board. And I just want to start off by saying thank you to each board member for taking on what I consider to be a tremendous responsibility, and that is the responsibility of guiding the education of our community's children. No small deal, big deal. Your responsibilities are solemn, and they encompass the vision, structure, accountability, and support for education for Lakeville area schools as we move forward. And we are moving forward. On behalf of the administration of Lakeville area schools, we welcome this new day, and we are committed to working with you toward fulfilling our education vision across this community. I will now administer the oath of office, and I would ask our 4 members if you could come up forward here in front of me on the ground. Brett?
Oh, no. I don't want to be in the picture.
Well, you may move out of the picture. If you would just stand a little bit back, because we're going to do this very ceremonially. How about centered on me? There we go. Thank you. All right. If you will, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your full name. Swear or affirm that I will support the constitutions of the United States and of the state of Minnesota. And that I will discharge faithfully the duties of the office of School Board Member of ISD 194. To the best of my judgment and ability. Congratulations.
Family members want to come forward and take some pictures, that's fine too.
Official, I love you. Brett.
I went the wrong way. See, I make my own path. Congrats. You can, yes. Bring family.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Peach family came up. Yep.
Could we ask for one in return?
Support network. Yeah, Amber, move over under the. Yeah, a little bit. Ready? Cheese.
Everybody get their pictures? Thank you. I love that picture with your family. It was super cute. So cute. So cute. All right, as we move into our election of officers, we will have a brief recess after the election of chair to help us transition leadership. For our new board members, if you could please share your pictures that you took tonight with Kim Elson so that we can get that out with communications, that would be really helpful. We like to celebrate all of our new members, so make sure that you do that. All right, so we will start with the election of chair. I feel like we need a drum roll. Do we have any nominations for the election of chair? Director Thompson?
I nominate Matt Swanson for chair.
Right. We have a nomination for Matt Swanson. Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Carly Anderson.
Okay. We have a nomination for Carly Anderson by Director Cameron. And sorry, I didn't say who nominated before Kim. That was Director Thompson. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations for the office of chair? And finally, are there any other nominations for the office of chair? Okay, hearing none, we'll put it to a roll call vote. Kim, can you call out everyone's name?
Carly Anderson? I'll vote for myself, Kim. Thank you. Brian Thompson?
Matt Swanson.
Wrong name.
Matt Swanson.
Amber Cameron?
Carly Anderson.
Paul Carbone?
Matt Swanson.
Nan Swanson?
I will vote for myself.
Kim Baker?
Guess I'll vote for Matt Swanson there. So the vote goes, we have 5 votes for Matt Swanson and 2 for Carly Anderson. So the new chair will be Matt Swanson. As I said, the board will take a short recess of 5 minutes to give us a chance to transition leadership. Congratulations, Director Swanson.
I think we're going to do that, yeah. I'm not quite So Kim, we actually have a gavel for the chair? There's a gavel? Oh. Has it? Oh.
If we need it, though.
How about a drumstick? Would that work?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to reconvene because the camera is back on and we're rolling. I appreciate the vote of confidence from all my fellow directors, and yeah, I will do my best to ensure that I encourage discussion on every topic and hear everyone's opinion. Whether or not we agree with each other, that's totally fine, but definitely respect each other's voice. So with that, we will move on to the next election, which is the election of the vice chair. So you will have to consider that you'll probably be working quite a bit with me. So are there any nominations? I'll open the board for nominations for vice chair.
I'd like to make a nomination. Going back to our discussion earlier, I am thankful for you for stepping in this role. Thank you, Matt. I do think as a district, it's important that the vice chair and the chair can bring different levels of years of experience on the board. And so for that reason, I want to nominate Carly Anderson for vice chair. I know you didn't mention you wanted to be vice chair, but I think having that continuity in those meetings is incredibly helpful. I think it would be irresponsible of us not to kind of capitalize on experience. Having a new board member elected in the chair role, I think is incredible. And then having an experienced board member to support that person would be incredibly helpful. So
All right.
I nominate Carly.
So Carly Anderson nominated. Do we have any other nominations?
Matt, just a point of order. What we nominated earlier still stands, right?
It does not. So that was just throwing your hat in to let people know you're interested. So we're looking for fresh nominations.
Okay.
Director Thompson?
I'll nominate Paul Carbone.
All right. Are there any other nominations? Going a second time, any other nominations? One final ask. Any other nominations?
Before we vote, can I ask, since you had wanted to run for chair, like, are you okay with the nomination? Like, you accept the nomination of vice chair?
Yes, I accept the
Okay.
nomination, and I think, just in addition to Amber's comments, which I appreciate very much, I do think just different perspectives, I think that benefits the district. So, yes, I do accept that nomination. Thank you.
All right. If there are no other nominations for vice chair, the nominations are closed, and we'll move for a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, will you call?
Matt Swenson,
Director Carbone?
Brian Thompson,
Paul Carbone.
Brett Nicholson,
Paul Carbone.
Carly Anderson,
I'll vote for myself.
Carbone,
Paul Carbone?
Amber Cameron,
Carly Anderson.
Kim Baker.
Carly Anderson.
All right. I believe that Paul Carbone has taken the nomination and the position as vice chair. Congratulations, Mr. Carbone.
Congratulations.
I assume do we not switch seats for this?
No.
Or do you stay over there?
No, you don't have to.
We'll keep Paul over there. How about that? All right.
Paul's in the corner.
We'll switch later.
All right, we'll move on to the next position, which is the election of the clerk. I will take nominations for the clerk position. Director Nicholson?
Nominate Kim Baker.
Are there any other nominations?
Nobody wants it.
Any other nominations? The third and final time, any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, I would ask that the minutes reflect just unanimous consent that Kim Baker is now the new clerk. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, and the final position, the election of the treasurer. I will open the floor for nominations for treasurer.
I will
Carly?
nominate Amber Cameron.
Amber Cameron is nominated. Any other nominations? Director Thompson?
I'll nominate Brett Nicholson.
All right. Brett Nicholson is nominated. Any other nominations? Any other nominations? And the final time, any other nominations? As there are no other nominations, we will close the nominations and call for a roll call vote.
Kim Baker,
Brett Nicholson.
Amber Cameron,
I'll go Brett Nicholson.
Paul Carbone,
Brett Nicholson.
Brett Nicholson,
I'll vote for myself.
Carly Anderson,
Amber Cameron.
Brian Thompson,
Brett Nicholson.
Matt Swanson.
Brett Nicholson. All right. With that, Brett Nicholson is elected as the chair. Congratulations, Brett. Or sorry. Yeah. As the treasurer. You can take it if you want. But all right. Now that that's out of the way, we'll move on to some actual business. Under paragraph 5 on the agenda, the recommended actions. In my understanding, we were going to treat these all as a consent agenda, essentially, where we vote. Not these ones?
No, these were going to vote on individually.
All right.
It's when you get down to E.
Okay. So 5A, setting the board meeting schedule. Do we have a motion to approve the schedule as currently set?
I'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
It is seconded. Any discussion on the motion?
I just have one point to add to this. For the board members that attend 917 meetings, sometimes we have to adjust that schedule. So just to be mindful that sometimes we might have to adjust the time of the meetings or at least allow for a board member to be late. And then also there are a few times when there's an election day where we have to adjust times. So it's important to, just for the public's awareness and also board members' awareness, to check the times on those, because sometimes we'll meet at 4 or 4:30 instead of the usual like 6 or 7, just based on townships that are having elections or other things that come in with to conflict with the board schedule.
And am I correct that we typically post any changes by Friday prior to the meeting? Okay, so they'd be made public online, so everyone has notice. Okay. Any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, I'd call the matter for a vote. All in favor in accepting the board calendar, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. Next is to set compensation and mileage for board members for 2025. Our current annual compensation is $6,750 and an additional $600 annually for the board chair. I did not know that. We follow the federal guidelines for mileage, which is 70 cents per mile for 2025. And I would accept a motion to approve the board compensation and mileage as it's currently set.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion on the topic?
I'm pretty sure Director Thompson had something to say about this, just because he had something to say about it before.
Nope, I'm good.
All right.
All right. All in favor of approving the board compensation and mileage for this year?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all those opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. All right, 5C, next we'll consider the designation of the official school district publication as Sun This Week for 2025. I don't believe we have any other options, so I will accept a motion to approve Sun This Week as our official publication.
I'll make the motion.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion on the topic? Director
I've
Thompson?
got one question. I have heard that the Sun This Week has moved into a prescription or subscription model or something. And so is there a clause or some kind of rule where anything that the school district shares to them, that has to be public? It's not blocked by anyone, or it's not blocked by their organization? And so are there instances where we send stuff and they could potentially block it? Do we know? Let me
think-
rephrase that. Not block it, but require someone have to have a paid membership to actually access it.
Other districts run into that same thing with, like, the Star Tribune is the most closest one for some of the other districts, and they have subscription-based too. So I think it would meet the same standards for this newspaper being subscription-based, although they do have some free content.
Yeah, I'm assuming the requirement is that it just be published publicly, not that people be able to access it free, but I could be wrong. Director Nicholson?
Does it have to always be a physical paper? Is there an online option, or is there anything even
Director
Possible.
Anderson?
Well, it is public. I do wonder, and I don't know, you can access a lot. Can you still access articles? I mean, I think you can still access it online. So that might be something we can talk with them about in terms of making sure that when we submit something that is published online and available.
And again, so I'm not opposed, but it is something that I think I'd like for us to just research briefly, just to make sure that we're aligned with what the community has access to when we send things out in that direction. I don't, like you said, there isn't another entity that probably fits this needs. So, but something to explore. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is it's statutorily required, but if the legislature ever comes into the times and changes things, that would be ideal if we didn't have to pay for it. So, or if the public
I think
didn't.
adding to that, I think there's so many other vehicles that the district, right, supplies in terms of communication. And so I think, Director Swanson, to your point, this is required by law to have a paper, but it's not our only means of communication to the public.
Well, and we have the Public Engagement Committee that we need to get rearing here, get going on it. But something we could explore in that is what are the different avenues for advertising things related to what's going on in the school district? So not just like Chamber and Rotary, but other, organizations where maybe we can try to better disseminate information.
Yeah. Director
Maybe we
Thompson?
can reach out to the city of Lakeville and they may post stuff for us too. So, but he's not here. Never mind. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, can you repeat, or who was the second on that? I heard Kim's voice and then I didn't catch. Brian?
Yeah.
Brett?
We'll go with Director Nicholson on that one. All right. Any other discussion on this motion? In that case, we'll call it for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, the motion carries. 5D, consideration of the designation of the district legal counsel. We currently have several firms, Squires, Walsperger, and Mace, Ratwick, Rozak, and Maloney, and Kennedy, and Graven. I would entertain a motion to approve those same firms for 2025.
So moved. Oh, you get it.
So moved.
All right, Director Cameron, is there a second?
I will second.
It's been seconded by Director Anderson. Any discussion on the topic? Director Thompson?
Can you provide additional information, or can someone explain why there are three? From what I recall last year, I think there are some that are specific to maybe special education and others that are not. But if someone might be able to explain, that'd be helpful.
We currently have some law firms that are representing the school district in open litigation. So we wouldn't want to terminate our agreements with that law firm. And then some law firms specialize in certain areas that others don't, like special education. That's why we have the three different law firms.
Can I ask one more question, just in
Yes.
case you know? Just because we approve these law firms now doesn't mean we're not bound by using just these three at a later date, correct?
Correct.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? If there's no further discussion, I would call for a vote to approve the three law firms of Squires, Walsperger, and Mace, Ratwick, Rosnick, and Maloney, and Kennedy, and Graven as counsel for the district for 2025. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. All right. The motion carries. Now, 5E. As I said before prematurely, I believe we are treating these as consent agenda items. I know for us new board members, we got into this discussion a little bit earlier, we don't know some of the background on the different topics here. But in any event, we are required to approve these, or vote on them. So 5E1, or subnumeral 1, designation of official depositories for school district funds and investments. The recommendation is that the financial institutions as specified be designated as official depositories of the district for 2025 per statute 123B.14, subdivision 4, and those are Wells Fargo Bank and Brokerage Services, Fidelity Investments, U.S. Bank System, PMA Financial Network, Inc., and the Minnesota School District Liquid Asset Fund. 5E, subnumeral 2, is to authorize the executive director of business to use facsimile signatures for checks and use of last year's plate. 5E, subnumeral 3, is authorize the superintendent or executive director of business to make short-term investments and to perform the duties of the clerk and treasurer. 5E4, authorize the superintendent and the executive director of business to lease, purchase, and contract for goods and services within general budget categories. And 5E5 is to authorize the superintendent or executive director of business to utilize wire transfers or of investments and payments. Are there any, I would entertain a motion to approve all 5 of those items.
So moved.
All right, moved by Director Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Cameron. Is there any discussion on these items? I would just say, Director
I just have a
Nicholson.
question. Is there any sort of process in terms of the contracting for goods and services? Like, do we have a vendor approval process? Do we go through an RFP process? What is the way in which we go about some of the larger contracts that the district does have? And are we going to?
Superintendent Baumann, Gina?
Board authority, there are thresholds on, at dollar figures for board direct approval, and we actually do some of those below that threshold. There is a obligatory and regulated process for requests for proposals and proposals that we follow, and be happy to lay all that out for you in excruciating detail. But yes, we are regulated and governed, and we do follow that, and we are audited on that matter.
Any other questions or discussion on the motion? As I noted, I mean, similar with the other issues, I mean, some of these things we just don't know yet as new board members. But if there's no further, Director
No,
Thompson.
again, I think the intent here is to authorize the school district and the superintendent and folks within his team to carry on the ongoing operations of the school business. And so for additional items, 1 through 4 or 5, if additional questions around the process and to learn more about that, I suggest that we should bring that up as an agenda topic in a future working session, just so that we can obtain additional clarity, but also if there are process changes we'd like to make, we can entertain them then, and then we can always come back and revisit this and put additional parameters or guardrails where needed.
All right. If there's no further discussion on that, I would bring the motion for a vote. All in favor to approve, say aye.
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 All against? The motion carries. Before we adjourn, I did want to just discuss a little bit of kind of our roadmap moving forward on future meetings and just get some thoughts from the other board members too. I know as a newer board member, there are a lot of questions that we still have, you know, for the public they don't know. We've been getting a little bit of a crash course leading up to today And yeah, the operation of the school district is a lot larger than I think people on the outside know it is. And so there's a lot of questions that we have, or that I still have, before I think we can really make decisions. And I think for us as a school board, I guess my goal would be to, set some goals for the district pretty early on here, especially as it relates to student outcomes, which I think is, one of everyone's top priority. It should be our board's top priority. So I anticipate, us needing to have meetings with the teaching and learning directors and get some additional information from them so we fully understand what is going on, what's available, what assessments are being reviewed right now, so we can properly set our goals and the benchmarks moving forward for assessments. And then after that, probably a close second is speaking again with Mr. Holmgren a little bit more in depth, and I know we've talked about this already, just getting a better picture of where all the money comes from that funds the school district, what it's used for, what it can't be used for. Once again, getting a better knowledge as to that. As far as agenda items, if any of the board members have topics that they want to put on the agenda throughout the week, I would expect that you can email Paul or myself and we can discuss it and create an ongoing list of, hey, here are agenda topics that we want to get to at some point in time when it makes sense. So any other topics for agenda that people would like to discuss? Director Thompson?
I think last year we were talking about committees and stuff of that nature, and when it wasn't on the agenda for this year, but that is something that I believe in the working session for next week. Okay, so we'll get an overview of all the various committees, which ones are required, which ones are things that we have done, but also making sure that we understand the value add of those committees and time commitment, and then that would be a big one. But yes, thank you.
That did just remind me of something. Any thoughts on treating the working session just as normal board meetings? I mean, I think if we're here, we're discussing things, I think we conduct business if everyone's comfortable with that.
So
Dr.
one of
Baker?
the issues I have with having the working sessions a little less formal is just accessibility for our community and for others who may have hearing issues. The microphones that we use when we're sitting around are hard to hear. It's hard to pick up softer voices. To replace those microphones, it's thousands of dollars that I don't feel like the district needs to spend when we have microphones at this table that can pick up everyone's voices and then provides accessibility for not only our board members, but people that are trying to listen and follow along online. That also goes with the visual component of that, making sure that we have the video component when we are up here. I think that just provides, again, accessibility, which has always been one of my main concerns with that. There are ways for individuals that are hearing impaired to lip read or to plug in that to like YouTube and get a script for that as well. That just helps for accessibility reasons. So that's one of the reasons that that I feel like it's important to at least have us at this table having the discussion. And obviously just making sure that everybody has access to the information.
Director Cameron?
I appreciate that, Kim, a lot. I think the only thing I want to oppose is having attended a lot of work sessions, I appreciate the kind of collaborative feel. Like, this is very formal, right? And I'm not a formal person, so that's part of my my persona. But I also appreciate in a work session having all of the directors from across the district sitting around the table like you've often had, Kim, because often questions are to them about how does this work or how does that work? And so I think this dynamic is awkward, to be honest, to have those authentic conversations. So I appreciate, I don't want to spend a lot of money on IT, and I'm not an IT expert, that's for sure. But I would like to, I'd be interested in exploring how do we facilitate deep conversation in an authentic way while still maintaining the accessibility options for people wanting to tune in. So that's my opinion.
I had a very similar thought, but I almost wonder, and it would be very helpful for you guys to have input. I think if we stayed up here, we should somehow make sure that people are in front, like make more of a circular pattern. Because this is not conducive, like having directors on other sides is not conducive to collaborative discussion, which I agree is much more part of the work sessions, and it just feels more like being able to have conversation as opposed to the formality of this. But, so if we did do that, I think we would want to make sure we can see everybody.
Sure. Director Thompson?
Yeah, I'm in favor of having conversations up here on the board. I mean, we are in a governance capacity. Like Kim said, I think having them recorded, having them, the speakers are much easier to hear, and then also from an accessibility point of view. But you are right. If they were maybe sitting on that side, if there were two tables, but moving forward, I think having a forum like this, I get it. It does feel more formal but for me, maybe not as much because I've been doing it for 2 years. So it's kind of like I've got candy back here, but that's a separate issue. But it doesn't have to be formal when we have these kind of conversations, but it makes it easier so that we've got the microphones on, we're following, parliamentary procedures of who's going, and we don't overspeak from each other and stuff of that nature. So I am in favor of this.
Director Baker?
Just to make one more point on that too, in the past, we've come into some issues when we've made decisions at a working session because it's less formal and we didn't have a formal vote on it. And then we had to turn around and do it again at a formal meeting after the board had already made a decision. And then there's the opportunity that we could flip the decision. It puts things in this gray area on how we are doing those decisions, because anytime the board is in capacity and we're meeting, it's a formal meeting, whether we call it a formal meeting or not. So any decisions that are made around that table, that's the board's voice and that's the board's will. And whether we're doing a formal vote or whether we're just deciding based on the majority, it puts us in this quandary, especially for the issues where we are supposed to have a formal vote, because yes, we had the meeting and the board was there. And so technically, by law, it's a formal meeting, but we didn't do the vote up here. So then it's almost like it does count, but it doesn't count. I just don't like the gray area of it. Like I like the cleanness, making sure that, legally we're doing what needs to be done. And so that there's no additional liability with, well, you said this night, and then the next night when you voted at this meeting, you didn't do that. So I don't know, just as chair, it put me in some situations that I thought we didn't need to be in if we were making sure that we followed the process of at least Robert's rules when we were doing these meetings, and that we were treating them as a regular meeting just because we were still making decisions.
Yeah, I can definitely appreciate that. And you are right. I mean, anytime we're meeting where there's a quorum of us, it's a meeting.
Right.
So if there are decisions to be made, which could be beneficial if we need to make a decision on a date that would typically be reserved for a working session, I don't know how we could make them any more informal. Maybe I just don't call on people and people just
Can I
speak
clarify?
out of turn.
I know this is a formal thing. I mean, this is very different than how work sessions have been done for the last 15, 20 years. So it's just, and not to say we can't change it, but, and I'm fine changing it, but that's what I mean. This is just a different environment than sitting out there at a table.
Yeah,
That's all.
may I
Yeah.
I'll just address this a little bit. So to the point of the microphones and the pickup, yes, that is an issue. We could solve that. But I came to district in 2013, and when we started going down here, that was a change, just to be clear about the timing of all that. So, and we were in a very different environment over at the little shack that we call the headquarters. And it was appropriate for the size of our district at the time. It's not a pejorative statement. And it was a much smaller room that we operated out of, and then we moved to City Hall. Some of you may remember that if you were heavy television watchers of board meetings for Lakeville area schools at the time. But we were in the city chambers, and we did many meetings in there, which is a little bit more like this configuration. So we've probably done it all twice, just to share.
Sure. Yeah, well, I appreciate the discussion. And Director Thompson?
So my last comment is that, just to restate, you are right. Every meeting that we have when there's more than 4 board members, it's a meeting. And if it happens to be on a Thursday, or if it's not on a regular cadence day, then it's considered like a special meeting or an off cadence meeting. But generally, if we meet on Tuesdays, they are regular meetings. We have historically called them working sessions because we talk about topics in a kind of more of a deliberative fashion, but still within the confines of a regular board meeting. And so what I would suggest that if there was an agenda template or agenda format that we could use for every meeting, and then part of a section in it could be topics where we need to have more of a working session part in it, I'm fine with that. And as long as we keep consistent, then things are going to ebb and flow. We're not going to have as many report outs, but that gives us a flexibility where if the financial components are ready to be approved earlier than expected, why can't we talk about that and just get it done instead of having it the third Tuesday of every month or so forth? If there's if there's an HR discussion that needs to be made, we don't need to wait 30 days to approve something. And so I think there will be some efficiencies in a structured agenda template. Accessibility benefits for having it at the board table, and then I'll look to the administration on how to solve where the administration sits when we have these kind of discussions.
Just for clarity, other districts to combat this issue, so they still have their working session where it's a little less formal, and then they have the opportunity where they leave the bottom part of the agenda and they move into a regular meeting, and then they come up to the table and they make those formal decisions. So they have that option within like a working session still format where they move into that. So then again, that would leave that gray area out of it. But I do agree, like I would be curious to see what some of the accessibility options would be to make that so people can hear a little bit better. And just to add in, one of the things for City Hall that was also nice was that they had a microphone on the side of the stand for people that are in wheelchairs so that they could still speak and not have to worry about having the microphone up high too. So, I mean, those are just thoughts that I think of, making things more accessible for everyone in our community.
We could probably squeeze a bunch of people up here.
This is true.
I mean, there's probably,
Dr. McDonald, you can sit by me.
get nice and cozy.
Thank you.
That's true. Any other discussion on that? If there is none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to leave?
Motion to adjourn.
I will move to adjourn then.
Motion to adjourn. I'll second it.
All right. Seconded by Director Carbone. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are done. Thank you, everyone.